Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode where I speak to Rahul, a former tech lead at Meta, aka Facebook, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, obviously, where he talks about salary, what the interview process was like, why you might want to get into big tech, and why you might not. He's really open and transparent, which I really enjoy, and I hope you get a lot out of this episode. As a major bonus to you, the good-looking listener of this episode, if you go to the show notes, you're going to find a link for Join Taro, which is the business that Rahul owns. It's a platform for leveling up software engineers. I have a course on there that is free for a limited time and will also get you a massive discount to Parsity upon completion. If you're interested in either the discount or just taking the course about breaking into tech as an outsider, check it out. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please share the link with anybody else you think might benefit or like that course. See you. All right, today I'll be speaking with Rahul, co-founder of Join Taro, a platform for software engineers to level up in their careers. It's an amazing platform, one that I use and one that I actually did a course for recently about breaking into tech. They have top leaders from some of the best tech companies on there, giving you the kind of advice that you need when you get beyond just learning to code. Welcome to the show.
Brian, I'm really happy to be here. My favorite users of Taro are the ones who participate and then go on to share their knowledge as a creator. So you fit that bill exactly. So I'm really excited that you were able to share that, and also happy to be here.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate it. I think you have a wonderful platform. It's one of those things that we need more of. You know, we teach people to code, and there's all this information about learn to code. Here's how you get better at React. Here's how you get better at JavaScript or Java or whatever. But then it's like, well, then what? Like, how do you go past junior to senior? What about when you want to get to senior to manager? How about when you want to get to manager to tech lead? In your case, you have a pretty amazing history. You worked as a tech lead and manager at Meta, aka Facebook. You're in a very small class of software engineers that will ever really work at that level in big tech. And today I want to get your take on your experience there, why you ultimately left, the advice you'd give to new developers who want to aim to get into big tech or just have really great careers.
I love it. I'm an open book. So let me know what you are.
Oh, I know. I can't wait because
I'd love to try and help.
I want to ask numbers and all that kind of stuff because you've been really open about that, which I appreciate. Mm-hmm. I like it when people are open about that stuff. And it's just an interesting thing. And it's kind of like it blows your mind when you hear some of these numbers. But I'm looking forward to asking about that. How did you break into FAANG? And for those of you that don't know or wondering what FAANG stands for, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, basically a catch-all for the biggest top X companies in tech. How did you get in there? What initially drew you to go to these kinds of companies?
Yeah. So let me start off by saying that I have been very lucky in my career. I'm going to try to share some things that are not about luck. And I truly believe they're reproducible, and a lot of the tactics that you share, that I share, I think can really be used and employed by people to advance their career. But let's be obvious, right? Like I'm a lucky guy. I feel like my whole background, like how I grew up, I went to Stanford, I guess got lucky to meet people and find opportunity. So I'm not going to discount that.
Sure.
That's a big part of, the career I ended up having. Starting with, college. I think that's the biggest thing. And you ask, like, how did I get into FAANG or how did I get interested? I think that I came to Stanford in 2009, and it was very clear to me that tech was amazing and powerful. Mm-hmm. Like, I had people down the hall from me who were making iPhone apps. This is like the early days of the iTold platform.
Very cool.
And they were making tons of money. And like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like, one person can do that. You don't need a team of 20 people. You don't need a company. You can just do stuff.
Yeah, right.
So I think I was exposed and my eyes were opened very early on to the power of tech. And I think when I tell people about college, Stanford or a boot camp or wherever people are, like the number one thing you can get by joining an institution like that is a peer group of people who can open your eyes to what is possible. And so that's the biggest thing I learned.
Yeah.
There's many possibilities of where you could go work. But I think the reason it was always top of mind for me and for many of my peers, and I think broadly in the industry, is that they're well known. Everyone has heard of Facebook.
Sure.
Everyone's heard of Google. It's also fairly well known that you get paid at it, like very well. Like maybe not the best ever, but certainly above average. Probably much better than average. So that's another element. And then third, the same thing as what I said earlier. Like if you join one of these companies, you will interact with amazing people, amazing developers, amazing managers. And that's probably one of the best things you can do to open up more opportunity and more learning for you in the future.
I like what you said about going to Stanford, opening up opportunities beyond just the education that you got. It wasn't just a skills acquisition piece you got from going there. Is that accurate to say? It was like you got a built-in network, right? You're going to school with people that are movers and shakers in the world of tech.
Exactly. I mean, the skills acquisition part of it, I feel like you could probably find better lectures than what I experienced at Stanford on YouTube. Like, that's the beauty of YouTube or the internet, right? Like, you have the best people in the world teaching you React or JavaScript or algorithms. I mean, yeah, the teachers at Stanford were also very good. I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
But I think the more important thing is that you had the ability to build a relationship with faculty or students who pushed you to do more or pushed you to deviate from what you thought was the standard path or what you thought you would do. And that, I think, was worth way more than the skill acquisition part, which, it's not that hard to find if you do a Wikipedia or Google or YouTube search.
That's really interesting you say that. And that's kind of what I know intuitively, but I've never been to Stanford, so I don't really know. But is it fair to say that there's no like proprietary, unique knowledge that you get going from like Stanford or maybe MIT that makes you ultimately better than an engineer that went to a good boot camp, for example?
Not at all. Yeah. I mean, I think that I've met incredibly talented people who graduate from boot camp. So I think there's certainly nothing to that argument of like, oh, you get this very special knowledge at Stanford or MIT. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
I think one unfair advantage that you do have, though, if I'm being honest, is that people assume that you're competent if you went to one of these schools.
That's right.
So like, I think there is, frankly, I mean, you know more about this than I do, but I think there is, frankly, a bias perhaps toward a boot camp grad.
Oh, yeah.
And if you compare a boot camp grad or a Stanford grad, I think 99% of the time, or 100% of the time, probably, a hiring manager is going to default pick the Stanford graduate and say, oh, I assume they're going to be competent. They have some level of foundational knowledge or competency that you might have to work a lot harder to prove as a boot camp grad.
Oh, yeah.
So that there is an advantage there.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's that validation, right? It's that built-in validation, that little badge next to your name that somebody says, you're likely going to be pretty smart. You went to one of the top universities. Yeah. We're going to assume you're smart. So for those people that are coming from like non-traditional backgrounds or basically anywhere outside of like really top universities, what are some of the challenges they face when they try to get into a company like Facebook or Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google? And how can they overcome these challenges?
So one of the things that I've observed a lot for people who are bootcamp graduates or they come from a non-traditional background is I think they undersell themselves, or at least they could take action to reframe the conversation to be a lot more attractive, right? So, candidate number one and candidate number two. Candidate number one comes to me and says, hey, I went to a bootcamp, I followed a tutorial and I did this React Bootstrap project. Check it out. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then candidate number two comes in and says, hey, I took the initiative to dive into this new domain and I built this project and I noticed that, hey, your company or your team works a lot with SEO. I actually spent a month diving deep into search engine optimization, into SEO. And here are the things I learned. I put it on my GitHub repository. A lot of it might be valuable to you.
Yeah.
So when you can flip the conversation to say, hey, I just need mentorship, I need handholding, I did a tutorial, but I need a lot more help to get hired. That's not super attractive to me as a hiring manager. If you instead come in and say, hey, I'm still fresh and early in my career, but I'm eager to learn. I've proven out what I've done on my own, and I can actually flip the conversation and I can teach you. Like I have expertise I can bring to the table about whatever it is, SEO or Android or accessibility. Like it's not that hard to teach someone if you spend a week or a month on a topic. And I think that's really a powerful way to distinguish yourself is what can you teach me? That's like a really powerful question that I would encourage people to think about.
Oh, totally. I've noticed that my skills I've acquired outside of tech, like learning how to write online, marketing, just the basic stuff I know about running a business and doing ads and things has been really valuable. Like whether I was at the last company, Clorox, a massive company, and I was in a marketing department and I could speak intelligently with people that did marketing, or now in my current company, like 5 people, and telling them what I know about, here's how you integrate Stripe, and that actually helped me out. They found me and they said, hey, this stuff already. That's going to be a huge draw for us at this company. And I had never really thought about that. I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally lend a hand in things outside of my day-to-day, like writing JavaScript or TypeScript or something like that. I can also
offer this as
Yeah.
some expertise. So you can use a lot of what you did in your former life, especially if you're coming from a non-traditional background. Like if you know about a certain industry, that could be really valuable to the people that might not
Yeah.
know how to target people in that industry.
I think that's a really good insight, because if you think about it, like, okay, the core competency of a company, let's say like Google, it's going to be incredibly hard for someone to say, hey, I know something more about search or ad ranking
Yeah, right.
compared to the people at Google.
Yeah.
That is what they do all day. But if you now consider the intersection of the Venn diagram of like Google, they do a ton of things. And so you have enough engineering skill and enough know-how, but you also, to your point, you might have this really intuitive, or you have this background which allows you to be really advanced in another domain.
Mm-hmm.
And now the intersection becomes way more attractive to a company. It's like the example I said is SEO.
Yeah.
That's a good one, because it
For
is
sure.
like engineering adjacent,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of core engineers don't know that. The one you mentioned about marketing, that's another great one. It's like, hey, you have this amazing persona on social media, on LinkedIn, and you have this ability to write and capture people's attention, which is also incredibly valuable. If you can marry that with deep technical skill like you have, now you've immediately distinguished yourself in a way which is really powerful if you're a job seeker.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about selling yourself at a certain level. I'm curious about this, right? Like my most popular article that I've written, or one of the most popular ones, has been about data structures and algorithms. Everybody is obsessed with learning data structures and algorithms, and I get it. I didn't know this as a self-taught person. I learned it. I gained confidence, and also just some foundational knowledge that helped me out. Like maybe not on a day-to-day basis, but I don't regret learning. It was a great thing to learn, right? But everybody wants to know about this interview, right? You passed the interview, you got really high up there. If it was as easy as studying data structures and algorithms, and you could just pass these tests, then we'd have a lot more people getting into these massive tech companies and getting these crazy salaries. What are people missing about the interview beyond DSA that is like blocking them, or that they should be thinking about when they try to go to these big tech companies?
Yeah, I mean, the infatuation with DSA, data structure algorithm, or leak code problems is always so funny to me. And I just feel like it's so overblown. But at the same time, it is like for FAANG companies, that is the entry ticket to get in. Not for every company, but for the big tech, it often is.
Yeah.
So I think, what are people missing? The way I think about it is that there are two very distinct parts of finding a job. One is getting the interview, and the second part of it, the second phase, is passing the interview.
Yeah.
And preparing for DSA is very much a phase 2 activity. But the mistake that people make is that they're jumping ahead to phase 2 when they haven't done phase 1 yet. And phase 1 is things that I think you're really good at, Brian. It's like, let me go out and network really well. Let me add value to people. Let me post on LinkedIn. Let me build up a bench of people who can advocate for me and give me a referral. Let me build up a side project that shows my competency. So I think often that, and I'll be clear, like that part, I think it's more ambiguous. It's harder to track your progress, to say, hey, I'm building a side project. I know it's going to take off. Like, it's really hard to know that in advance.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think people shy away from those activities of meeting people and making referrals. And they jump to, let me get a green check mark on leak code that will show my progress day over day.
Yeah.
Even though, it's like effectively a waste of time because they haven't even gotten the interview yet. So there's no point to learning all these data structures and algorithms.
Oh man, I've seen that so many times. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? I can't get a job. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? I'm grinding leak code every day. I'm like, well, that's something you do when you have an interview coming up, right? Like, because the chances are, if you're not going for one of these top tech companies, you're going to get asked like a question like, tell me, how to write a React component or something like that. And you're going to be like, well, I was ready for a binary tree. You're going to, I'd use a hash map or something like that and get laughed out of the room. But yeah, that's a really good point. How was your interview like? I mean, did you interview people at Meta at any time?
I actually didn't do interviews at Meta. I did a ton of interviews at Pinterest. So.
Okay. And what are some things you noticed that you wish you could have told some of the candidates that may have improved their chances?
A couple of things come to mind that are kind of more tactical. One is time management in the interview is really important. So you've gotten to the interview, usually like at Pinterest or Meta, it was like a 45-minute interview. And sometimes people will spend way too long on the first question. Generally, what will happen is, as an interviewer, you're trained to give 2, maybe even 3 questions in that time. And so sometimes people, I don't know if they're just unaware of it or they want to be really, really careful and precise about it. but they spend way too long and the time management is screwed up. So now like they only have 5 or 10 minutes left for the second problem, which is generally harder. And now they're in trouble. The second one, which I think is super common, is people get very stuck in their head when it comes to solving these problems. So I give you a problem and they kind of just are silent for 5 or 10 minutes. And I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah,
right. And I think one of the key things to realize is that it's not just about getting the correct algorithm and the correct runtime. It's also equally about how are you communicating. Like the interview, it ideally should be emulating a collaborative effort of me and you are coworkers and I'm getting help from you or you're teaching me something. How would that work? And if I'm not getting any learning or information from you, or if you're even worse, if you're like rude to me or if there's some sort of conflict, that's going to kill your chances of getting an offer, right? So I think having that communication element while you do the problem is another very common mistake I saw at Pinterest and when I was doing my own preparation for a ton of companies.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. And even at the companies I worked at, which are far from FAANG, that was an issue. And it was always awkward because I'm like, I want to tell you that it's hard to give you a yes. It's impossible if it's difficult to work in this environment here. And I know it's awkward because it's like unusual to be doing this, right? It's not usual that somebody is like watching you write code on a whiteboard or in a document without the use of your code editor. But if you're just sitting there silent, or worse, if you don't take direction and I'm trying to give you help in the interview and you're like actively not going for it or don't really want to collaborate, it's kind of like, well, it doesn't matter if you got the answer right at that point. Because if that was the case, then every competitive programmer would be at Google or Facebook or Pinterest or wherever, right?
It's worth asking about, like, if you know what companies you want to interview for, I think it's definitely worth asking the recruiter or hiring manager, hey, I'd love to learn more about what to expect. I want to come in with my best foot forward. Right. A lot of companies, to your point, they don't do the traditional DSA. A lot of the airtime or like oxygen in the room is taken up by FAANG, for better or for worse.
For sure.
And so there's like a too much emphasis on DSA leak code problems that a lot of companies, they don't actually use. Like if you're a startup, I actually think that, like I run a startup now, right? Called Taro, like you mentioned. And we're not hiring, but if we were to hire, I definitely would not ask people, like, here's a doubly linked list, here, do some operation on it, right?
Yeah, right.
That's very much a evaluation used by big companies because they have literally thousands of candidates they have to calibrate and go through. But if you're applying for a startup, there's a really good chance that they're not doing that. It's going to be much more project-based or much more like pair programming, something which might be more representative of the startup life.
Exactly.
And so I think being clear about what that looks like can save you a lot of anxiety or wasted time.
That's a super good point. Yeah, that's what just tracked in my own experience. I talk with a lot of students at Parsity, and I'm always curious, like, how was your interview process? And I always ask the question, how many lead code style problems or DSA problems did you get? And it's so low. Yeah. Here's a bit of a spicy question for you. I know you're open about this, which is why I'm asking. And people in other industries don't often just share their salaries. But for some reason, software engineers are much more open about this. In fact, there's a site, Blind, which maybe you're familiar with. It's a very toxic site, by the way. It's called teamblind.com. And there is a phrase in there, an acronym, TC or GTFO. And it's total comp or get the F out, right? Now, me personally, I appreciate when people share their salaries because it inspires me. And it also lets me know what's possible sometimes. I'll never forget, I was working at a boot a long time ago. After work, I'd take a train into the city and I would be a mentor at this boot camp. And I was talking to some of the other mentors that were teaching, and one was sharing with me a salary. And at the time, I was like, what? You make that much? And I'm in the Bay Area. I had zero clue what was possible. And I was really grateful. And I still am really grateful that he told me that, because then I thought, you know what? I've been aiming way too low. I didn't know this was possible. This is before sites like that existed, or people like you are out there exposing in a good way, like, here's what you can reach. So I'm curious, what was your salary like at its peak when you were at Meta or anywhere in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be open about it because similar to you, like I gained so much from the transparency of my friends or, faculty who would tell me like what to expect or what I could do, what I could ask for more.
Yeah.
So my peak earning year in 2021 at Meta, it was more than $800,000. It was like $830,000 of total compensation in that year. I should caveat by saying that it's a ton of money.
Yeah.
Part of it was because of the growth in the stock market of the Meta stock. So as many people might be aware, a big part of the compensation is you get stock units, like RSUs at the company that you join.
Mm-hmm.
You might, or you often will do that, especially at big tech.
Yep.
And so I had joined Meta in 2017. And so the way it worked for Meta, and I think for most companies, is that when you join the company, you effectively lock in the price of those particular stock units. And because I got lucky, frankly, with the Facebook or Meta stock growing in value from 2017 to 2021, that made 2021 a blockbuster year where that equity had almost doubled in value. I had gotten promoted as well. I had done well at the company, but the combination of the stock growth and my performance at the company led to this really magical year of
amazing.
a ton of money.
That is nuts. What do you do? Because you were probably a pretty young guy, right? I mean, it's only 3 years ago. You're still a young guy, but I mean, what do you do with that much money as an individual person?
I mean, I think you kind of touched on this at the beginning of like what made me feel comfortable leaving. This is, to be really transparent, this is part of it, right? Like I think I was 29. So yeah, I mean, still a young guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way I think about money is that it just gives you optionality, and you can define life and do things with your time on your terms now. And so that was a freedom that I was afforded by getting lucky and working hard in tech for 9 or 10 years at that point. And so I think after that year in 2022 is when I decided to leave big tech. I said, okay, I'm going to make way less money. I still make way less money now doing Taro, but I said, okay, it's a two-way door. Like I have money saved up because I got lucky and I had that payout in 2021, and I can go back. Like I'm going to try my best to make a company and help engineers like learn what I wish I knew through Taro. If it doesn't work out, 2 or 3 years later, I'm confident I can go back into big tech and go back into Meta.
Yep.
And so that was, I think, my mindset is like, hey, I'm so grateful for having gotten this. Let me take advantage of it and try and do something which, my parents couldn't have done. They had to be getting that stable income where a lot of people can't do. What a waste it would be if I didn't take advantage of it, right? Like that was my mindset at the time.
That is so cool. And that's such a cool way to think too. I really like what you said about money giving you optionality, because you hear that tired phrase, money's not everything. And I'm like, yeah, it's not everything, but it's certainly not like nothing, right? Because I've been broke and I've been very not broke. And I'm always going to prefer not being broke, obviously. But it gives you options. It frees up your mind from one more thing, right? It gives you another space to insert a new problem to figure out. And for you, it sounded like business is what you got into. And I want to talk about that because I'm really curious about how you went from that to starting a really cool business. But when people hear these outrageous salaries, they think that's crazy. And then they see a TikTok of some dude drinking kombucha or whatever, drinking a beer in the office all day long and say, how are these software engineers getting paid that much? Can you speak a little bit? Like, what's your day-to-day like? Were you chilling out making this much money? Or what was your day-to-day as a team lead / manager at Meta like? And are these salaries justified in your opinion?
So let me first start off with like a meta point, which is that I think you have to be really aware of the context. I think when you watch a short form video on TikTok of someone like chilling out at a volleyball court all day and drinking coffee at Google and not doing any work, I think that can really warp your mind on like what do they actually do. But I think it's worth understanding, hey, what level were they? What company were they at? How hot or how not hot was the tech economy at that point? Like these things are not stagnant, right? And so I think sometimes people look at that and they kind of take it out of proportion. So actually, that's why like long form conversations like this are actually really valuable. And like I hope that people can like listen to our whole conversation or other people who they trust, like you, and they can make kind of better judgments about what is feasible and what is not feasible.
Yeah.
Because I think the opposite is also true, where sometimes I talk about it and they're like, this guy is a complete fraud. He's lying. There's no way it's possible, right? So I think don't be on either extreme.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Don't just dismiss something because you think it's not believable. And also don't take it completely at face value and say, oh, and now no one at Google or LinkedIn or whatever, they do any work. It's all just like
hanging
lounging
out.
around
Yeah,
drinking
right,
coffee.
for sure.
Neither extreme is true. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of my like what I did, I think it definitely ebbed and flowed. Like there were times where I was working, 35, 40 hours a week, like a pretty kind of normal, chill job. And there were other times where I was probably putting in 65, 60 hours a week consistently for several months at a time because I worked on a relatively new initiative at Facebook. So we were launching a new product and that did require a ton of time. I also, I was pretty ambitious coming in. Like I was really gunning for promotion. And I think Meta in particular, Facebook in particular, is really, they empower engineers, which is a good thing. But it also means that whether you get a good or bad rating there's no one stopping you. There's no one hand-holding you. And so you have to really put in the time to justify whatever it is that you're aiming for. And then the other part of your question was like, do you deserve that much? That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I think that when you work at a company that has that magnitude of scale, things become really wonky. And what I mean by that is if you are working at Facebook or Google, where literally hundreds of millions or billions of people are using your product every day, then you can make a change and it has a 0.01% impact. And it could translate to millions or tens of millions of dollars of additional impact for the company.
That's right.
That's the power. I think that's why I think a lot of us are interested in software is leverage. Like you make a change and then thousands, millions, billions of people could get impacted. So from that perspective, you could argue, hey, you're actually being underpaid, right? Like the amount of additional marginal value you're driving if you work on ads, for example, at Meta, could be tens of millions, billions. Oh, it makes sense to get paid $1 million a year. At the same time, though, I do think that, and I guess the other element of it too, is that big tech is also so unique in that money, cash, is not a scarce resource, which sounds so weird to say. But what I mean by that is like effectively Facebook and Google and Microsoft and Apple, they have infinite money. Like they literally have more money than they know what to do with. I heard some stat where like Apple has 120 billion or like some crazy number like that. They have 120 billion in cash that they literally don't know what to do with.
Wow.
And I think it's a similar number, I think, for Meta and Google and Microsoft.
Problem to have.
Like they're just so profitable.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other reason why you have this dynamic of this kind of overpay. And I think it is maybe like, you could argue it's not fair because like I'm doing Taro now. I definitely don't have infinite cash. We're really cognizant. Most companies, most businesses in the world are very aware of, hey, how are we going to make cash flow? How are we going to pay payroll? And how are we going to maintain positive cash flow? So that was kind of a long, rambly answer. But I think the answer is probably like, yeah, there are certainly engineers in big tech who get overpaid because they frankly don't contribute much and they're not helping make the changes that will positively impact the products. But there are also, frankly, engineers who are drastically underpaid. And they might be building a new product or a new feature, which is going to be used many, many times a day by many, many people. And then you could argue that those guys or gals are driving lots and lots of value. So, I mean, I think both of them exist.
No, that's a really good answer. I mean, the net effect is, obviously these businesses are in the business of making money and not just giving it away. They're not charity organizations. So they've made a smart bet that, hey, some people are going to underperform. The ones that overperform do really well and net us the $1 billion for their pay of, let's say, $500,000. We've won the game. That's a fair exchange to us. That's a good way to look at it. And
I'll share one thing as well, like which I thought was so interesting when I first heard about it, and might be interesting for a lot of your listeners. Like there's a well-documented pattern of Google, maybe 10, 15 years ago, like in the early 2010s, where they would hire engineers on staff and pay them a bunch of money, not to build anything, but basically to prevent them from doing another company or joining a competitor.
Yeah.
Right? Have you heard of that? So like Google has so much cash that they're willing to just pay $500K or $1 million a year or whatever absurd amount of money, basically to sideline you. That kind of goes to what you're talking about, right? It's like Google is happy to effectively to throw away 10, 20, $30 million a year because they make so much money from this core set of really amazing product managers or designers or engineers who they're milking for billions of dollars a year, right? So like it's a very weird or like unique way of approaching economics. It's like most people like me and you, we think about money all the time, but for Google, Meta, Microsoft, Apple, big tech, like their perception of the world and how they spend money is completely like non-logical for most people. That's
a very good point. And I read this thing on Stack Overflow that, I mean, most of us, we don't think like that because we're not in companies like that. It's something like 50% of developers that they surveyed work at companies where there are 50 or less employees. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. So we don't really ever deal with these problems, or the majority of us, a lot of us will never deal with these problems that have this amount of scale that we just don't understand. It's hard for the human brain to comprehend that kind of thing. But that makes sense. With the outrageous scale comes also outrageous Salaries.
Yeah, and I think one more thing I'll also add, which might be contributing to it, is that I do feel like to some extent the big tech companies are a bubble in that sense that like, I mean, I did use Stack Overflow a lot even when I was working at Facebook, but I will tell you that it's way less than I'm doing now as a startup engineer or maybe at Pinterest because as you are aware, like these big tech companies, they have their own custom abstractions. They have literally their own build system, their own libraries, their own frameworks. And so it's not uncommon for an engineer to join one of these companies and effectively join that bubble and disappear and like not really interact with the normal developers because like their whole tool chain, the language they use, everything might be completely
proprietary and custom.
And so I think that also might contribute to this kind of divide that me and you hear about so much of like the FAANG and the non-FAANG.
Yeah.
That I think is the reason why, there's that division between the two.
Overall, did you like it? I mean, did you enjoy what you did?
I loved it. Yeah. I mean, overall, I'm really happy I went there. I think you get paid well, obviously, which again has a lot of benefit. You meet people who are really smart, and these are people who will go on to, just become executives at the company, or they'll leave and do the startup, and you can just kind of learn from their own experience. And I do think, it might sound like vain or superficial, but just the pedigree is valuable.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, it's like what you said earlier with Stanford. Like, you have this credibility, they have that badge next to your name. Like, hey, you worked at Facebook. I've heard of Facebook. So maybe I'm going to assume that you're competent, or I trust you a bit more compared to someone who didn't work there. And I think that's not to be taken lightly. Like, there is really tangible value in pedigree.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I tell my kids that. I'm like, if I was you, I would try to get at least one big company in your belt, because that can set you up for maybe the rest of your career, honestly.
Yeah.
You go to a really top company, you just need to get there once, stay there for some amount of time, maybe not even do that well. But you could use that badge as validation. I mean, honestly, I went to Clorox, which is not, no one looks at it like, oh, a tech company. But I'll tell you that has helped me tremendously. Just getting that one well-known company under my belt has kind of set me up and opened up a lot of doors that hadn't been opened before. So yeah, don't discount that badge at all. One of the things I talk to new developers about, people really early in their career, is they're freaked out by AI and layoffs. That's all they hear about. I was talking to my neighbor who's way outside of tech. He's in the insurance business. We were sitting down talking about business. And he's like, oh man, you're in the business of like teaching people to code, and you're in the business of helping engineers grow in their career. And he's like, aren't you afraid that, about AI and layoffs and the basically it's going to come to end to tech? What do you say to people with those fears? Because that's all they're hearing and seeing on YouTube nowadays.
I think that those fears are drastically overblown. I think it maybe helps to start by talking about the definition of like, what does a software engineer even do? And if your definition of a software engineer is someone who can write a for loop in JavaScript and then be able to pull out some values and display it in like a button.
Yeah.
I think you should be worried.
Me too.
That job might,
for sure.
That job might go away, or it might change dramatically.
Yeah.
But if you instead frame the job of an engineer, which is, I think, how you should view the job of engineer, as someone who is able to communicate with a computer to deliver value for any number of businesses in the world. That is a broad enough prompt and a challenging enough prompt that I think it's going to be still very much driven by human beings. And so I think that's the actual implementation details of how you're able to communicate with the computer, that might change. It likely will change. I mean, we've already seen it change in the past year or two, and I think it'll change more in the coming years. But the skill of being able to work with a team, decompose a problem, and then somehow talk to a computer, whether it's like an AI or actually writing code in an IDE, I'm very confident that skill will remain important. And in fact, it might grow in importance because there's effectively an infinite appetite for software. So as the cost of producing that software comes down, I think it'll allow more people to come in, and also it'll make the people who know how to do that way more valuable in the market. So I think it's like a boon. It's a good thing for people in our field because it'll just help us have even more leverage than we already have.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's a bunch of great tools, but I can't imagine telling somebody that knows nothing about code, enter a prompt into ChatGPT and then have a working website. Because I think even logistically, where are they going to put the code Do they know how to use a code editor? How are they going to deploy it? There's so many steps
and
in between.
That's certainly part of it.
Yeah.
I think another part of it, which I think is equally important also, is how do you even know what to build?
Yeah.
That actually, oftentimes, like a lot of the projects I work on, that was actually the main topic of debate.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, a designer, an engineer, and the product manager, they all have different opinions about what should the flow be for the user to take action, or how should the user interact with this feature, right?
Yeah.
That actually is very hard to just tell the computer to solve that for you. Like, I think that's really where that teamwork and kind of collaboration is going to still require a lot of human input.
Yeah, I totally agree. But it's a shame because I see so much clickbait on YouTube, and you can get those YouTube rabbit holes, or you find yourself on Reddit and people are telling you it's the end of the world, and people are getting discouraged. I was at a college speaking, and I heard students thinking they were going to not pursue tech because of like stuff they read online. I'm like, what an awful thing to happen, to discourage young people from doing that kind of thing. Last question for you. You've worked with thousands of developers now, maybe tens of thousands through Jointara. You've helped tons of people level up in their careers, get their next role, find their first role. So you have a lot of data and just a lot of like breadth of experience at this point. What is some advice that you see that most developers could use that they need to hear?
The one piece of advice that I feel like I've tried to follow and it has worked really well for me is work forward from promising situations instead of working backward from what you think is your objective. And this is something that I got. He said it in different words, probably in better words than me, but Paul Graham, who's the founder of Y Combinator, he talked about this concept in one of the essays he wrote. But in the context of software engineering, I think this is so important because a lot of people I talk to, they're so fixated on, okay, my goal is I want to be a Bootstrap and React developer in 2 years. I want to be employed and that's going to be my thing. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of rigid about that.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't allow them the opportunity to really create the career or the job that they're really going to thrive in because they're so myopically focused on, okay, here's what I'm going to do. But instead, if you look at it and say, hey, where do I have an unfair advantage? Oh, it turns out I know someone who is a really good Android developer. You would be stupid not to go and pursue that. Like if this Android developer who you know is able to mentor you, if you're able to work with them on a project, go do that. Like don't be so rigid and focused on React and Bootstrap that you're now going to ignore this amazing thing in front of you. So I think that's one manifestation of it. The other reason why I think it's important is that we just talked about how AI, it probably will have some impact on our jobs, our careers. Like that's one of the things about tech is that it will change and it's so unpredictable. Like who knows what's going to happen, what technology, what language will be hot in a year or 5 years or even 10 years. It's like impossible to say what's going to happen in 10 years, right? And so I think this mindset of let me just start with what I have in front of me and where do I have a unique ability to add value? Where do I have a unique ability to contribute to the people or the companies around me? Start with that as your like focal point of like how you orient what you do. And then everything else will take care of itself. I guarantee if you have that kind of approach, 5 or 10 years from now, you're going to have a great job. You're going to have a great career. I'm not sure what it'll be, but you're going to be taken care of if you have that attitude of starting with promising opportunities in front of you.
It's a great mental model you gave me to even think. That's not something I've often heard. I appreciate that. It was really good. It's funny. You've described yourself as lucky a few times throughout this chat here. And I always feel like people that are the luckiest often create their own luck. It's very obvious to me that you've done a lot of the right things in life so far. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me. Where can people find you online?
I think the best place would probably be LinkedIn. And I'm also actually quite active on YouTube.
That's right.
In fact, I had the honor of having you on my YouTube channel. So people, if you're interested, people can find that interview on my YouTube, but YouTube and LinkedIn are the best places.
Yeah, your YouTube is killing it. You are a creator on many levels. It's really cool to see your YouTube channel blow up. And what I really appreciate is you don't do too much of the clickbait, doom and gloom stuff. There's a few creators out there, you being one of them, that I really enjoy the content you put out. I'll have the links in the show notes as well. Thanks again for coming on the show, and hopefully I'll have you back again.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. It's so much fun to collaborate with you. I'm a huge fan of what you're doing and Parsity is doing. So, really eager to keep this up.
Much appreciated.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan. See you.
Thank you. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to Parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.